Oh, I'm on the screen. Whoa. We're good? Good afternoon. I'm City Commissioner Dan Ryan. Welcome to the fourth this year's Portland Children's Levy Allocation Committee meeting. I'm joined by my committee colleagues in person. Here's Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards from the county. Good to see you, Julia. And we have county-appointed community member Felicia Tripp-Folson online, correct? All right, so we have quorums. Let's get started. I'm also joined by Levy staff Erica, Joel, John, Meg, Lisa, and Yoshing. Thank you all for joining us today, either in person here in the chambers or on live stream. Now on to our agenda. First up, let's approve the minutes from the June 13th, 2023 meeting. I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Felicia, just to hear your lovely voice, you want to second that? I can second it, right? Okay, I second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. You said you had Felicia?
She's not on the screen.
She has to have her camera turned on to be on the screen.
Okay. Is she unmuted and everything? 'Cause we don't hear her either.
Also had message her, but she won't appear on the screen unless her camera's turned on.
So not even a nameplate appears? It's hard to know who's here otherwise.
We're just waiting for one of our committee members to join us. She's here. We're just having a little bit of technical Zoom difficulty.
Says she will try from another device.
It's the most riveting vote on a minutes we've ever had. I know. Tension.
He's such a good guy. I like Gary a lot. He's a good guy. He needs just your coaching now and then. I know when I was like, actually, the rest of the board needs to set the parameters because that's what makes it a board.
Hello, everyone. This is the Portland Children's Levy Committee meeting, our Allocation Committee meeting. It's great to be back. Sorry for the technical delays. We were in the middle of passing the minutes, and we had a motion and a second, and now we have all four of us are here. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that passed. Look at that. We get to go to the next item. Friends, we're going to do 2 items today for sure. the grantee partner reflections and the small grants renewal. We'll see if we have time for the other ones, but we will have a hard stop at 4:30. Does that work for everyone? All right. So grantee partner reflections. I assume that you're coming. Who's coming up for that? Meg, you got this one?
Can I go ahead and speak? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Welcome Meg McElroy to the stand, and she will take it away. Thanks, Meg.
Thanks. We have two grantee partners who have joined us today from the Early Childhood Program portfolio. One is here in person to our right, Mariana Bonham from Impact Northwest, Parent-Child Development Services, and the other speaker today is Sarah Bazan from ERCO's Child and Parent Success Program. Both are home visiting programs that serve children prenatally to age 5, but they particularly focus on infants and toddlers. So I'll turn it over to Mariana to get us started. And then Sarah, you're here virtually. Hopefully you will chime in when Mariana's done. And thank you both for being here.
Welcome, Mariana. It's great. Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's fun. Hello. My name is Mariana Bonham from Impact Northwest. I supervise a program, Parent-Child Development Services. We serve kids, as Meg was sharing, from 0 to 5. And we work with an incredibly diverse community. Families from China, Slavic community, American, Hispanic. The team is just as diverse, which is such a fortune to have. And what we try to be is being part of the support system of these families. One of the main outcomes or goals that we are monitoring is that kids are on track with their milestones. And what we found is, like, in this last year is, I don't think you'll be surprised, but kids are struggling more with getting to communication, problem solving, and yes, social skills. So this is something that we're tracking, we're identifying, and I think that today is just like that experience, like offering virtual visits was making possible because we had the technology, but it was really difficult. And now that kids are, after 3 years of the pandemic, we are seeing those results. Kids are struggling because communication, virtual communication is just not the same. Having the possibility of doing these home visits in person, the playgroups in person, is just such a game changer. And kids that were born during the pandemic and after have very little opportunities, especially if parents work and cannot get the transportation. So having the funds to go to the family's home, to take them to OMSI, to have interactive visits make just such a huge difference. One of the examples that I am bringing to you is we are also fortunate to have a staff that speaks Ukrainian, and we are receiving so many referrals from them, from this country as well, that are immigrants that are getting to know if they are going to be, if Oregon is going to be their forever home, or at least for a while, and being able to understand the culture, to advocate for them, to guide them, and use public transportation and guide them with them. How is that? And being on their side is just a game changer, I believe. We want to keep implementing the voice from our community and having the possibility to make it visible in our work. It's also something that we're doing. An example of this is a collaboration that we just have recently with an artist, Tatiana Ostapenko. She agreed to paint a mural in our classroom that could reflect this culture so that families could also see themselves in the art and their surrounding. And after it was painted, we received a comment from someone from the community saying something along these lines. When I saw the mural, I remember when I was a young kid at my hometown, and my grandmother used to always push me in this chariot. I promised that one day I was gonna be happy to push them. I had to migrate, and I was not able to do that. However, seeing that mural makes me remember those days and the promise that in my head I am doing by supporting from far away. These little examples, I think, are just what I have the pleasure of watching and bringing to you. So, thank you.
Oh, hold on, Mariana. Someone might have some questions for you. That was wonderful. Do you have any comments or
I don't have any questions, but thank you for sharing.
anyone else? I'll just make a comment. Thank you. Thank you for realizing that you really do need to do in-person home visits. That's so awesome. And I think everyone needs to keep being reminded that the depth of what COVID did to society. Obviously, there's, COVID generation when it comes to the K-12 all the way through. I've heard about this at the university level too. So it's everywhere. And anything you learn, can you let grown-ups know, adults, so we can, because there was also an impact of COVID on how adults work with one another. So I think we can always learn from the best practices that we're using for children and youth all over society. So thank you so much for your work
Of course.
at Impact Northwest. Felicia or Tracy, any comments before we go to our next presenter?
No, I was just going to ditto what you had to say, which is whatever we can do for young people to do things in person has been instrumental in helping them rebuild their social skills. A lot was lost in it during COVID, and I just want to say thank you for all the work that you are doing to serve our youth.
Yeah, thanks. I know when we were trying to make the case to renew the children's levy, those were the best conversations. Everyone had a story about the impact of the COVID lockdown on their children, families, their grandchildren. It was a good story. I mean, it was good to hear that story, and then it made people really focus on the importance of having the children's levy post-COVID. Thanks so much.
Yeah, in-person playgroup sounds way better than a virtual playgroup.
Indeed, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Meg, the next presenter.
And the next presenter is Sarah Bazan from ERCO's Child and Parent Success Program. Take it away, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me online. I wish I was in person there, but the waiting is worth it. My name is Sarah Bazan. I work for Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization. And as all of you, I was enjoying hearing the testimony from the last speaker. It touched my heart. And I have so many things that I can relate to that. We serve in children's and parent success. We serve families from the Middle Eastern, Asia, and African American, with the languages specifically to Vietnamese, Somali, Ukrainian, Russian, and Romanian. And very soon we're going to have a group from Ukrainian. So we serve little children as babies until the early golden years, where is the foundational time to build their strength and their safety and their bonding, their secure attachment. So during the last year, the successful team of CAPS in IRCO, they provided more in-person services by request from their families. More than the 85%, I would say, it was in-person services, and it was a great success. All our service goals were met and surpassed by that, because the great bonding and the great social relationship that they developed. And also the children they are on track of their developmental milestones. And it is just, and it's a service from immigrants to immigrants. So it is just a beautiful support that we develop through our services. And I think this is the main reflection that this year brought us for all of us. It's just is the companionship that we create. And also this year we focus a lot on developing and promoting the infant and toddler mental health. Because for being immigrants and refugees who went through trauma a lot and being parents, we need to heal our wounds in order to promote safety and also healing, emotional healing to our children. So this is a big plus for our services this year, and many parents express their gratitude, and they are just really content in our program. They are really engaged. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? It's so great to have you here, Sarah. Thank you. Yeah,
Just question.
Commissioner Brim Edwards.
I was wondering if you could share the number of families that you supported and what area of the city, and then what was the primary service that you provided through the grant?
Yes, every year we serve about 100 children with 60 to 65 parents through home visiting, early learning activities, group fields, parenting group support, connections with services and resources, parenting education, using parents as teachers curriculum, and now including circle of security. I'm trying to translate in my mind every single thing in English. Sorry if I take time. Yeah, those are our services and the quantity of families that we do every year.
Is it citywide or in a particular part of the city?
City of Portland, but if my memory doesn't fail me, I think we focus in the southeast Portland, but it's every resident in Portland is welcome to apply, let's say, for this. But we're focused on immigrants and refugees, Somali, Vietnamese, Ukrainian, Russian, and Romanian population.
Thank you for the answer and also for providing a welcoming and healing place for families.
All of us need that.
So true.
How do you get your referrals?
This is a good question. And that's what I mentioned, that is we are a team of immigrants and refugees, early learning professionals and mothers. So each of us are a leader of their own community. And we are very creative to make referrals, but mostly our referrals comes from the families who exit the program. So they make a referral for the next family because they just, I wanna say, they just loved it so much. Like, oh, I need to recommend this program to my friend, to my neighbor, to this and that. So they create this net of support.
I love that. So it's really organic and it's attraction. You know, instead of a lot of loud promoting, it just organically happens through word of mouth. That says a lot about the program. Thanks. Anyone
Thank you.
else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing more information about your work. I just really want to highlight that I find it very impressive that you not only met all your milestones and goals, but you exceeded them. And when you talked about the environment of healing, I really believe you can't heal if there's no trust. And the fact that your families wanted in person and that they're sharing word of mouth, how impactful the program is, and also suggests that there's a lot of trust that you've built. So I just wanted to congratulate you and thank you for your work.
And thank you for your support. Actually, this is our place now. This is our home, and we are building a strong community through these services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, Mariana, and Meg. I think that concludes this agenda item. Okay, we'll go on to small grants renewal. Erica's going to come up, and also she's going to be joined by John Kelly, the financial analyst, and an overview of the small grants renewal process and renewal recommendations. Take it away, Erica and John.
Okay, are we going to be able to have the slides?
Yeah, I'm screen sharing. I'm just waiting for them to pull up.
Okay. Great. So thank you, Commissioner. I will begin by giving you kind of a quick overview. And I wanted to first review the steps that we took over the summer. So if we can go to the next slide, thanks. On June 13th, the body approved the renewal period and the funding formula for the small grants. I'll review the actual formula in a couple of slides. The fiscal review process wrapped up with the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, and John's about to talk to you about that part of the process in one moment. annual reports came in on July 31st, providing us with a second full year of data about program performance and spending. And in August, staff reviewed the annual reports and held grantee meetings to clarify any data points in the report that may be needed and to explain the steps in the renewal process to the grantees. Once all of that was completed, we sent performance summaries to each of the grantees on September 11th so they could provide written comment on their performance summaries for their grants if they wanted to do so. And then a few days later, on September 15th, we sent the renewal recommendation for the recommendation amounts out to the grantees, again with the opportunity to provide written comment. 2 grantees provided comment on the performance summary, and 1 provided comment on the renewal recommendations, and both of those were transmitted along with a memo for this meeting. So next, before we kind of get into all of it, John is going to talk a little bit about the fiscal review process for the small grants.
So this was the inaugural fiscal review process for the Small Grants Fund. And what we did is we engaged an independent CPA firm, Marina and Company, to look at the finances and the financial processes of the Small Grants Fund, the recipients. They looked at 6 of the 7 recipients or grantees. One group or one grantee received under the $25,000 threshold of annual granting. We think in the future we'll probably engage them in the process as well, but we did not do that this first time around. The goals of the review were, there are 3 that I want to mention. For us to understand the financial health and the fiscal infrastructure of the organizations that we're sending funds to help them, the grantees, to understand their own financial strengths and weaknesses. These are kind of emerging organizations in some cases, so it's a great time for them to get this kind of attention and to build capacity at those grantee organizations. We've discussed, among ourselves at least, a long-term goal of helping them to be ready for a full financial statement audit in the future. Some of them are already there, but some are on that path. So Marina and Company staff reviewed internal documents and processes considering 10 different metrics of financial health. Included in these were review of financial practices around accounts payable, accounts receivable, bank reconciliation. So garden variety accounting stuff, financial process stuff. They also reviewed 3 years of financial statements, current budgets, and financial forecasts. So kind of get a big picture look, as well as the detail of how do you handle your payables, how do you handle your bills, that kind of stuff. And significantly, for us at least, the auditors review the internal processes used to create 2 quarterly invoices that they would have submitted to us. So looking back, how'd you do that? You sent this bill to the levy, how'd you put that together? And the great news was we considered that one of the most important pieces, and in all cases, those all the folks passed with flying colors on that. The results were positive overall. There was 1 grantee who had no concerns whatsoever. 4 of the 6 had just 1 minor concern each, and 1 had a few more concerns. They had 4. None of them were major, but they're, you could do this better. Some of it was history, some of it was current processes. So no concerns surfaced that were major, and as I said, everybody did fine on how they prepared our bills, which was significant for us. So we kind of went back and forth with the Marina folks and said, what do you think we should do? How can we help these folks to improve? And the first thing we're going to do is offer 2 trainings, and we helped them. They helped us. We worked together. What do they need? What would be most helpful? And one would be for preparing for a financial statement audit. So exactly what I talked about, like what do you need to do to be ready to be audited? And one on internal controls, which is what are you doing in your shop to make sure things are run as well as they can be. And so those are going to come up probably after the new year. And we're still working on additional follow-up, especially for the shop that had a few more concerns, like how might we tailor some attention. So we felt really good about the process. The folks at Marina were terrific. It's kind of in there, what they want to be doing is being kind of consulting services in the nonprofit sector in Portland. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Thank you. I'm just so thrilled that we're offering that type of service with the small grant organizations. I think that, at least my experience in life with smaller nonprofits, is you don't have the bandwidth, and often it's difficult to expend your resources on having that expertise. So to know that we're a grantee that's offering such services makes me very happy, and I think those that invest in the Children's Levy should be thrilled about this. And so just really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You don't hear this enough in the grantee-grantor relationships with them. So thank you. Yeah. Was there anything that surprised you? And were they teachable? Because I think sometimes there's a fear when you have someone coming in to coach you. And I always like to use the word society works best when we're coachable and teachable.
Yes.
And so did you find there was a welcoming?
I wasn't on the ground. I was, it was the marina folks who I deal with. They're also our auditors, which is actually very cool. So I
Okay.
know them well. They were the ones having the conversations. They didn't, occasionally it's like, it took a minute to get what they wanted, to help people to understand, hey, I need this. But everyone was cooperative. And as I said, the results there was nothing major. We're going to definitely be at the trainings. And I'm looking forward to that because partly for the networking among them. Oh, we do it this way. We do it this way. I think that'll be.
Because there's no shame in this. It's like we want people to receive these resources of
Right.
Financial chops.
You
if
seem
will.
to understand, that an audit can actually be super beneficial for an organization to help
Yes.
you understand, oh, this will lift you up. If you do it this way,
Yes.
you're going to be more attractive to other money, et cetera. So.
And
I
I'm
had some
so
grant-
thrilled this is a part of the small grants program. Yeah.
I had some grantees say they were very excited about it actually because it is an opportunity for growth. And others, are newer nonprofits, so it was definitely a learning experience. But that capacity building is a big part of what the Small Grants Fund's about. So.
And
they
as
were excited.
nonprofits have their ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
they often, when they go down, it's because they're having financial challenges. I'm curious, were board members involved in any of these conversations with the smaller ones, since boards tend to
No,
have
it was
to-
like the financial, whoever prepares the invoices and, all the financial stuff.
Okay, they were all large enough to have that type of a
Yeah.
professional staff member. Okay, great, thanks. Any comments or
you.
questions from others
Okay, so,
on
go
this
ahead.
topic?
We still have more on the rest of the.
First, I think I'm off the screen again, but,
No, I think, but your mic, can you hear, you can hear you.
yep, and I think I'm up there, but
Oh, yeah, you're
for some
everywhere.
reason I'm off here, but I think it's fine. So is this are we going to have next the forward-looking conversation? 'Cause
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It-
then I'll
It's
hold my
probably after
questions.
she's done.
I'll hold my
I
questions.
just geeked out on the financial part.
Okay.
As a former nonprofit executive.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself, yeah.
All right, so then let's go back to those slides. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the funding formula and the renewal period, and this is that forward-facing part that you were talking about, Commissioner Brem Edwards. So the approved renewal period for the small grants is 2.5 years, ending on June 30th, 2026. You'll notice that's a little longer than for the large grants. That's to give us time to run the large grants funding process and then run the small grants process. This renewal period brings small grants into alignment with the same fiscal year as large grants as well. First, large grants start in the fall of 2024, and then small grants will be in the fall of 2025-ish. This funding formula is consistent with recent renewal of PCL's large grants. Staff use the same approach of calculating up to grant amounts using 40% of the 3-year grant total with a 4% COLA, which is compounded each year to support inflation and staff retention. Okay, going to the next slide. So here we're looking at the annual report data. As I talked about, those reports came in July. So we had 449 youth served in fiscal year 23. Again, this is just among the small grantees, which exceeded the goal of 373 youth. And nearly 70% of youth met goals for the program attendance. Typically, we get outcome data for mentoring and after-school programs from the Multnomah Educational School District, which allows us to have additional data on behavior, attendance, and graduation outcomes that we are able to then provide to our grantee partners. However, this year, we don't have those data yet at this time. So we are only able to report on 7 of the 10 outcomes that were in effect for this year. And of the 7 that we are able to report on, 7 were met. Last year, with the data, including the MESD data, 7 of 10 total goals were met. So still overall positive. In addition, small grantees also set disability inclusion goals. So those are those goals on how they will be working towards making their programs to be more inclusive for children from the communities they serve who also have disabilities. And in fiscal year 2023, there were 8 disability inclusion goals they were all working for across the small grants portfolio. Goals could be marked either as not started, in progress, or complete. By the end of that year, 4 of the goals were completed and 4 were in progress. None were marked as not started. So let's see. Yes, so, and that sometimes, okay, so that's all on that one. I want to go on to the next one because we're a little short on time. Okay. I would also like to share some quotes from the grantee partners. Wait, did we skip a slide? Did we skip one slide on funding? No. Okay. Then. Okay. Sorry, another technical issue today. All right, so I just want to share a couple of quotes for you from some of our grantee partners. And I was wondering if you might want to take a chance to read one of these. Commissioner Ryan, would you be willing to read this quote?
Sure, thank you. As a result of their consistent participation for the last 3 years, most youth have increased confidence in their ability to navigate the social and educational systems, and are empowered to have a strong inclination towards pursuing after-school programs such as Upward Bound, Rise, Sun School, and more. This shift in confidence and agency represents the primary objective and aim of our youth program as we strive to empower them to integrate into the education system alongside their peers. That's
Thank
from
you.
the staff of EECRC.
So that quote is from the Ethiopian and Eritrean Cultural Resource Center staff who operate a mentoring program. Primarily their mentoring services happen after school, but also on weekends. And they do a mixture of individual and groups with newly arrived refugee youth from Ethiopia and Eritrea. So if you could go on to the next slide. Would you like to read that one, Commissioner Burnett?
Well, I don't have my screen nearby, so I'll have to do it.
Oh.
We're extremely proud of the notable increase in attendance within our middle school group, an age group that has consistently struggled with attendance. We attribute this uptick to a significant overhaul in curriculum co-created with students and driven entirely by student voice to ensure engaging, age-appropriate offering.
Thank you. Yes, and that quote is by Portland Tennis and Education. They are in North Portland in the St. John's neighborhood. Forgot to mention the previous grantee is in East Portland. And they offer a variety of academic services after school as well as tennis. And they also offer adaptive tennis clinics on the weekends for youth and adults with disabilities as well. Okay, if we could move on. So I've given you the overview of the whole process, as well as some quotes from our portfolio. This slide represents the recommendations for funding for all of the grantees, including that 4% COLA that we mentioned that is compounded. And so what you see on the screen is the 2.5-year maximum. That concludes my presentation, and we can have discussion and move to vote when you all are ready.
Okay, thank you so much, Erica. Colleagues, any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yes,
I have my
Commissioner
mic on.
Burnett-Edwards.
I have my mic on now. When I was looking through the materials about the disability inclusion goal, I noticed that the grants that we just finished with were mostly about training for program staff. And I'm curious, in the go forward, will that still be goals still be focused on that, or will it more be focused on program participants?
Thanks, that's a great question. And so first, I want to say that when we originally did the application process for the Small Grants Fund, and we ran that round in 2020, the organizations that were primarily Black, Indigenous, people of color led had disability inclusion goals, and if they were disability led, they had racial equity goals so that we could reach a greater sense of inclusion, especially for Black, Indigenous, children of color who had disabilities, because we received feedback and community engagement that they were dramatically underserved. So one of the things that first came out is working with staff who were experts in their own communities, but not necessarily experts in disability. They all wanted to be able to welcome the new youth and families who are experiencing disability into spaces that were ready for them. And for that reason, many of them chose to start with changing themselves in order to be ready for the youth to come in. And then after getting that training, revamping their curriculum and changing their classroom techniques. So over the last 3 years, many have moved from training and learning onto implementation. So that looks like some have done assessments for field trip sites, like some of our programs are very field trip based. And they have changed their locations and developed several tools to make those experiences accessible for the youth. They've been getting more information about the accessibility needs on their intakes and making sure that they are changing their activities to support that. They've started adaptive clinics and integrating like wheelchair tennis into different things. So there's a whole variety of activities, but everyone pretty much wanted to start with learning, so then they knew how to take action that would be equitable.
So I guess just a follow-on to make sure I understand. So thank you so much for the explanation. It's great to get a deeper dive into it. Maybe
I apologize if that was too long.
No, it was great. Just have it explained because
Yeah.
to start.
So I do think they have gotten to the part where the participants are seeing things on the ground. Yeah.
And this is just my, maybe just being new, to understand the next round of grants going to have similar inclusion goals, and have those been set, or?
No. So when we do if Meg gets to come up here and talk about community council, what we're looking at right now is moving into community engagement. And now we go back to the community, like the last time we heard from the community about the needs of youth with disabilities, and hear more about what their priorities are and how that's shifted. And definitely, I think there's precedent and my hope that we'll continue to move on with these disability inclusion goals, but the way that the RFIs are shaped can look different based on our community engagement process and based on the work that Community Council and this body do together.
So the goals going forward haven't yet been.
They are setting, for the renewal period for these grants, they are continuing to develop their disability. So they will need to be developing new goals for each year this renewal because they have completed their original set, and those will be progressive. But then when we do a new RFI, it could include disability goals and maybe other kinds of goals.
And, do you mind if I ask just another
No,
question?
go.
Thank you. And
Learning.
then just a question about when reading through, it's really great to read through all the amazing work that's done with a fairly small amount of money.
Yes.
When say they didn't meet a participation goal, or in one case there was a pretty significant miss where the goals are going to be redefined. But say it's like, I think there was a tennis center where they said they were going to serve 70 students and serve something like 38. When you have a multi-year grant, is there an annual check-in or, okay, the expectation is to move to your goals, or is it, I look at that one where there's a, I think just the person who set the goal had left and they hadn't met the, weren't at all close to meeting the goal they set. Does that, like after a certain period of time, do those get sort of recalibrated, or you're noticing you're not on trend to meet it? And
Yes.
how can we support you to help meet it? Or
So we do reports twice a year. So we get mid-year data, and then we can kind of see how things are going at the mid-year, and we do check-ins with all the grantees at that. And if it looks like we're going to need to make adjustments, that we'll be talking about that at the mid-year. And then we also get the annual data. If a grantee is struggling, say with staffing or something like that, we may check in more times than that. In the past year, because we've had renewals, annual reports, performance, we've had a lot of different kinds of data coming in. And also just with small grantees, I tend to check in more with them. And we had the fiscal review, so we had many pieces. So there were many points of check-in. But at a minimum, it's at the mid-year and at the annual. And those are our times to kind of check in and adjust data and see what we need to do in terms of if there's budget adjustments that need to be made or goal adjustments.
just one last question. So in some of the commentary on the grants, it was participation may have been lower than expected, sort of like the people still coming back from COVID. And so we're back in COVID, ironically. We're about 2 years out from really opening back up in person. Is that a long-term trend, do we think? Or is it people are just still gradually coming back? And if it's a long-term trend, and I think like we heard this morning with the reflection, or not this morning, it seems like it was a while ago, we heard from the reflections just the value of that in-person connection making a lot of a difference. How are we supporting or adjusting with the organizations that we're supporting on moving back to greater participation?
Well, first of all, I don't think that is a struggle particular to the small grant. The large grantees have also seen, kind of a slow ramp back of participation. I think if you think about the first full school year coming out of COVID, I think it was really hard for the youth. There's a lot of things they were recovering from, and we heard about that in terms of mental health and impacts, and it took a little while to re-engage in different kinds of social activities. And this past year, I think, was better. Most of the small grantees went back as soon as they possibly could to in-person. Like, there have been other times where people have been more virtual for longer, and that's been harder with participation. But in this portfolio, people went pretty quickly to in-person. And the participation is trending up, pending no major disruptions in services to children. I think it's a good trend.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great questions. My colleagues, do you have any questions? If not, I just have one final one. John, this might bring you up again, but it's when we did the small grants, I can't remember the exact percentage, but I know that back to building capacity, we want to make sure that we're not the only big gift they received. What percentage can we give to their whole general fund?
We can do up to 30% of revenue.
Up to 30%?
That's the
Okay.
cap.
And I can't remember this. Do we have any, as we're helping them build their capacity, are we monitoring the growth of their other revenue streams, or we're not?
Not exactly. On renewal, we would be sure to be within that.
Okay, but we could give
count.
them feedback if they were trending in a percentage where our percentage was creeping up higher than 30%, we're letting them know that that's occurring. And
We did have to limit a few grants at the beginning of the process because of that cap.
Okay.
So we couldn't go to the full 180 was the number at the time. So we had to, and folks were
And I
able to
think
come
this
up
is great because you
my
want to
memory, yeah.
diversify revenue streams, which I don't think is taught to some people who start nonprofits. They assume they get one big one and then they might rest on that laurel, and it doesn't work for the long term. So,
All right,
okay.
so it's baked in for us because of the 30% cap.
Yeah, no, I
And
love
part
that
of
we
the-
had that. I knew we had a percentage. I just couldn't remember the.
Yeah, and part of the
percent.
process was feedback to them on trends of net assets, are they trending the right way on a lot of different metrics, including are their assets growing?
I think that being said, so some, because of where they were at in 2019, 2020 when they applied, their grants were capped, again, like what was said. If they were to apply today, they would be eligible for a larger grant, but they're still, because we're using the same 4% COLA for everyone, that's what has shaped the size of the grant award that we're recommending right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's triggered by the COLA.
Yeah.
But we're also looking at the big picture for their opportunity to renewal.
Yeah,
And
some
making
of
sure they're
them,
below 30%. Okay, good. I just
some of
want to
them
make
may
sure we
have
have that
reached a
type of
point where
feedback.
they would have to apply for large grants rather than small grants if we kept the cap at the same, and some would be eligible for larger, small grants.
Oh, okay, that's good. I love this. I love this dialogue. Okay, great. Colleagues, any more questions? Okay, we have to vote.
Yes.
This is a vote. Okay, so who's going to move a motion to go ahead and renew these small grant decisions brought forward by Erica?
I'll approve. This is Felicia.
All right, Felicia has moved and Commissioner Brim Edwards has seconded. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
And no one's opposed based on that, and it passes. Thank you, Erica. Thanks for your patience. So Lisa Pellegrino, you're going to come up now, and we'll do a briefer version of this. Great.
I'll make it short and sweet.
This item on community engagement, right? Yes.
Yes.
Take it away, Lisa.
So if you want to go ahead and put the first slide up. Wait for it to come
Let's
up
do 10
before I
minutes on
start.
this and 10 minutes on the next one. How's
Yes,
that?
we will. I know I'll be faster than 10 minutes. I will not talk as fast as I could talk, but I will
No,
definitely
don't
talk
do
quickly.
that, Lisa.
Yes, no, I won't. I've been warned not to do that. Okay, so first, I'm just going to ground you for 1 second about why am I talking about community engagement. So before when the levy was renewed in May, we knew we were going to do another competitive funding round, and the act that governs our operations requires that we do community engagement before we run a competitive funding round. So it's good practice, but it's also required. We are also required to use a variety of engagement methods, and the ones that are listed in our act are surveys, focus groups, stakeholder interviews, and meetings with the public that are open to the public. And last, we are required to use the results of our community engagement process to then create the program area goals and strategies that we want to fund in that competitive funding round. So that's why we're talking about community engagement, because we will be coming up on a funding round in 24-25. Okay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So after the levy was renewed, as I said, we began looking for a contractor to lead the community engagement process, and we interviewed 3 COBID certified firms. And just to refresh people, COBID certified means that they are certified by the state to be a minority-led or women-led or emerging small business. So those are the categories. And we selected Camille Trummer to plan and implement the engagement process over the next 6 to 7 months. So the slide that you see up there shows pictures of Camille and her team. Camille's on the top left, and her team, Melissa Burgess, Tanisha Woodson, and Annie Ozels, are in clockwise around. Camille and her team have really strong experience engaging with tribal and indigenous communities and Black and communities of color, and also youth and families. Their role, which is kind of all the bullet points you see on the slide there, are the things they are going to do during the community engagement process. So first is to finalize a survey instrument and have it trans-created, that was a new word for me, in 6 languages: Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, Nepali, Russian, and Ukrainian. And transcreation is a different kind of translation process where native speakers are consulting and working to create the questions that would actually be understandable in the language you're translating into, as opposed to just getting a word-for-word Google Translate type of situation. So that's kind of the process that the consultant uses to create those translations. So their team will conduct outreach and create and host an online and paper survey for community members and also for service providers. The goal for them is to collect 250 to 300 surveys from community members in the focus populations. And the focus populations we went over at the last meeting, those were set by the community council. So the particular communities we want to make sure that will be represented in the pool. They will also conduct 8 to 10 focus groups and up to 10 interviews with key stakeholders. And then the last task is that they synthesize all of that data from the surveys, the focus groups, and the interviews, and report those findings to the community council and to you. So that's kind of the plan at the big scale. By the time we have our December meeting, we'll have a more detailed plan for you. So we are just meeting with them starting next week. Okay, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So in addition to working with this main consultant who's leading the process, we are also have contracted with the community engagement liaisons, otherwise known as CELs, within the city. So the city holds a contract with PKS International, which is a local firm that works to increase public engagement of marginalized communities. And the CELs are leaders in their culturally specific communities who specialize in community outreach and engagement activities. And they will be working to reach people in up to 26 languages and to collect about 300 surveys from folks in those communities. All of the CELs speak English along with at least one other language and are able to engage people in their community in their home language. And they can also assist community members to complete surveys by providing oral interpretation for people. So that's built into the contract that they can do that service, particularly for folks who may not be literate in their home language, depending on where they came from, or some folks spent long times in refugee camps or didn't have the opportunity for schooling. So it reaches a very different kind of population than we've been able to reach in the past, I would say, with surveys that we did with our last community engagement consultant. Didn't have that kind of reach into different language communities. Camille and her team are going to be the ones who are analyzing all of the survey data. So the survey data that's collected by the CELs is going to feed into the system and feed into what Camille is doing. So they will be able to report on everything, so you'll get to hear about it all as of a piece, and then they can disaggregate as well. So that's kind of what we have planned at the biggest scale. It's just getting underway now, and we will hopefully have kind of a bigger update with a more detailed plan by the December meeting. Any questions?
I have just one quick one.
Sure.
Do your stakeholders include other funders, such as like Oregon Community Foundation, Meyer, Miller, Collins, Murdoch?
Yes, staff has tended to do that kind of outreach, since we are the ones that often work with other foundations, and so we will definitely have those conversations and probably have the community engagement folks kind of put their hands out more into the community at large.
That makes me happy. I look forward to hearing their feedback too. I think the more we collectively invest, the better impact we have, so it's great to hear that. Any other questions from colleagues? Okay, so we can go on to our final report, which is thank you, Lisa, the Community Council update. Meg's back.
Yep, and I'll try to make this one a little shorter too. Before I get started on my update, I just want to share the reason that I'm doing this update is that we had a staff member, Rachel Nakabala, who was our community engagement coordinator, and she resigned in August. So I'll be doing this update and I'm filling in where she left off for a brief period of time while we hire somebody new. Interviews for that position start this week, actually. We're hoping to have somebody new on staff by December. But before Rachel left, she coordinated a recruitment during the summer to fill 2 vacancies that we had on the council. And just a quick, I should say, caveat or note to the side, Commissioner Brim-Edwards, since you are new, the Levy's Community Council is an advisory body. They're new to us this year. They've met 4 times. And they are really going to help, as I will explain in a little bit, shape and develop our upcoming funding process. But the Allocation Committee, you all will continue to make the decisions about that process. So the council is really advisory. We are staffing them as well as staffing you, and you all as a body will be making key decisions with their input. So like I said, Rachel did run a recruitment process this summer to fill 2 vacancies that we had on the council. So we had 2 new members who started with us in their at the council's most recent meeting in September, Kathy Pedersen and Deanne Salazar joined the council. Together, they bring experience in public health, youth with disabilities, foster care and grant making, and Deanne is also a resident of East Portland. The summer recruitment also helped us find an alternate to serve on the council should we have another member resign. So we now have a full body of 13 members, and they have a range of experience in the Levy's 6 program areas, sectors related to Levy work such as education and healthcare, and in the Levy's priority communities such as communities of color, youth with disabilities, families experiencing poverty and food insecurity, immigrants and refugees, and LGBTQIA2S+. So like I said, Council is going to be working with us to help shape and develop the next funding process. And just to orient you to what we mean when we say funding process, that really consists of 3 main areas of work. The application, which you've already heard referred to today as an RFI, what we call a request for investment. So it's the kinds of questions that applicants have to answer when they seek Levy funds. And the RFI will include the funding priorities that come out of the community engagement process. The review process, so that's how the grant applications are reviewed and scored, also includes us as a staff summarizing applications and doing analysis on the applicant pool in each program area. And then funding recommendations for grants. We as a staff in the past have created a set of funding recommendations using scores from the review process and analysis of the applicant pool, and we give that to the allocation committee for their consideration and decision making. With the community council new in our work, we are looking to have them become involved also in the recommendation process, and we'll be working with them to develop a way for them to do that. So as we think about shaping the funding process and these 3 key steps, we as a staff, I wanted to share a little bit about how we're approaching that. We are holding with us the city's values, as well as some values that we have identified and the council has identified. Primary among those are equity, community-driven, feasible, transparent, accessible, and inclusive. We're looking at our past experience with application processes, including feedback from past applicants and past reviewers. And then we are meeting periodically as a staff to develop design options against those values and the topics and issues that council will advise. Here is a tentative timeline for how we'll be developing the funding process in collaboration with the community council's advice and your decision making. So this fall, we're starting to do drafting of the application and looking to develop scoring criteria and review process considerations. During winter, we'll be continuing that work at a deeper level and also gathering public input on versions of those application and scoring criteria materials, as well as any review process considerations. By spring, we hope to have those products mostly done and ready to incorporate the funding priorities that will result from the community engagement process. So we'll be working with you all along the way to make decisions as issues arise and with the community council to advise on this work. By the time we roll around to next summer, we should have all of that developed and ready to go. We as a staff will begin preparing for implementing the funding process in the fall. So this is a visual, for those of you who are visual learners, a visual of the steps I just discussed. You can see there on the left, we started with council meetings this winter and spring, and we developed and planned for a community engagement process and are beginning implementation of that. The phase where we are now is in the big red circle. We're developing the funding process. We're looking at the application review and recommendation process. We will complete all of that work by next summer. We'll run the funding process, and we hope to have new grants made by July 1, 2025. That date's important because our current grants will all expire by that date, and we anticipate that some organizations will want to reapply for funding. And for those organizations who do that and who end up successful in that process, we don't want to create a gap in services for children and families or for their staff. So I want to spend a little bit of time looking in a little bit more depth at what the community council did in their last meeting. We worked with them specifically around issues with our application. And the area where we focused most was on simplifying the Levy's grant application. That was the most frequently mentioned issue by reviewers as what needed to be improved from our previous process. It aligns with our values for wanting to make our process accessible, inclusive, community-driven, equitable, and feasible. And then also our previous grant application was 20+ pages per applicant. It was highly technical. It was a big workload for applicants and reviewers. So we trimmed sort of the essence of the grant making, or the grant application down to 2 issues that we put to council. What are the most important qualities of an organization that should receive PCL grants and why? And what important information is needed about program services that an applicant wants funded in order to decide whether to fund it? We asked them to consider those 2 questions and to really think about them as balancing the burden on the applicant of what kind of information is necessary versus what do you really need to judge it. So they did some small group work, brainstorming at their last meeting, and generated some of the following types of issues for organizations. And they're phrased as questions. Is the staff and community of the organization served representative of its mission? What evidence do they provide to back that up? How do they seek and grow from feedback to improve? How is the organization fiscally responsible? For programs, the types of issues that they raised were, how did the organization come to understand the needs of the community it wants to serve with the proposed program? What's the overall program plan? What does it look like? What's the outreach plan? What's the staffing or caseload, and how does it connect to the budget? How does the program create equitable outcomes? How does it define success, and what impact is the program having? How does the program engage with clients to understand whether the services have the intended impact? How does the program involve community members in evaluating the program? So these and other issues were some of what was first raised by the Community Council. And when we, as a staff, after their meeting, looked back at our RFI to see how it compared to the types of issues that we had asked last time and how it compared to what Council generated, they're pretty well aligned. It's just that we did it with a lot more pages and a lot more words. So we're looking forward to getting into the next meeting with them. They have a meeting in mid-November to really dig deeper into comparing our last application with their ideas that came out of their meeting in September, and beginning to prioritize which information matters most to them, because that will help drive the scoring criteria that we begin to develop and which parts are sort of worth more points in the application. So we'll be working on them with those application pieces. We'll also be introducing to them some considerations around the review process, kind of orienting them to what our past process was, giving them some reviewer feedback, talking a little bit about disadvantages and advantages to the process, and starting to think about where it could go next. Any questions on what we've covered and where we're headed?
I just want to say I appreciate that you're going to compare the last application with the one that you're proposing, and you'll send that to us in the board packet so you can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. You will start to see versions of that eventually that you will have a chance to review and weigh in on, that will be put to public comment for public comment input. So there will be iterations of materials before there's a point at which you all will vote on, yes, this is the application we want to use, and go ahead and get it ready.
So I have a question, but it also it's connected to a question, or sorry, to a comment. On the feedback from past applicants, is that both successful and unsuccessful applicants?
Yes, and the challenge with that one was that there were only 40 individuals who, I think, if I remember correctly, who responded to our survey of all, I think we sent it to over 160 people who were involved with both successful and unsuccessful applicants, and only 40 people responded. And so there's just not a lot of feedback that came back, and because there wasn't a lot of feedback, there wasn't necessarily really clear trends about things that worked or didn't work. And to be honest, one of the things that is often the most challenging for folks is the way in which funding decisions are made at the committee level. So we'll be able to share with you those considerations, but a lot of what applicants had to say had very little to do with how the application itself was structured or how the review process worked, and more about decision-making.
40 is still a pretty good response, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you asked, because in one of my other professional responsibilities, we were looking to create a group of people that with a diverse set of applicants, and a feedback I got from somebody is like, well, if you're looking for a diverse set of applicants, your application wasn't the process by which to get those, because just the timelines and like the volume of materials and the types of things we're asked for, we're not, like, you'd have to have a college education, you'd have to have the time to do it, you'd have to have the sort of technical and professional skills to put together things that were asked for, which was, I thought, great. It was the first year of an application process, so it was great feedback to get, so I'm glad you're doing that, because I do think, and I hope we figure out maybe another, if we didn't hear back from many people who were unsuccessful applicants, I hope we find another way to like continue to try and get that feedback, because I do think sometimes it's the ones who aren't successful that we need to understand why. It's may not be because they didn't have a great idea or a good proposal or a good program, but just navigating a process that they're not familiar with or not equipped to respond to.
Absolutely.
And I know Lisa and I have had this conversation. The board, or this allocation committee, will have a chance to vision some, looking at the key areas and with pre-K for all and the impact on that, and hopefully, well, I see youth as up to age 24 and just having those kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
In front end. Okay, great.
Yeah, especially once we have the results from the community engagement process. I think it will prime a lot of those kinds of content questions and conversations.
Yeah, I think there's finally a movement where having all the cutoffs be at 18 is a very silly cutoff. So I'm glad that we're going to be a part of that movement. All right. Anything else,
Any
anyone?
other questions?
All right, well, we did it. It was a little bit of a hiccup, about an hour-long hiccup, but we got here. And thank you, staff, for how you adapted today. And thank you, Adam. Adam is the person behind the scenes that makes sure that these operations work here, and he really doesn't want me to give him much more attention than that. But thank you, Adam, again, for problem solving today, as well as the staff. This meeting is almost finished. We have our next one on Monday, December 11th. The agendas will be sent to the Levy email list, shared on your Facebook page, and posted on portlandchildrenslevy.org. We always welcome your participation, and we'd like to join the next meeting or comment on agenda items. Go to the website, portlandchildrenslevy.org, and join our email list. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for being here. Take care. Bye. Meeting's adjourned.